Before we start this morning, I want to introduce your friends, Prabhu and Shoda from Dallas. Welcome. It's good to see you back in your native environment. Krishna house. Prabhu, you were a student here. What year?
2007 summer. I came to graduated.
And then you graduated.
Yeah, 2010 I graduated from PhD. 2012 from the research sciences.
And Dallas was now.
That is 2020, 21 January. I did graduate.
Shoda, you came to marry Prabhu. You didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. 2009.
2009. January 2009.
And then how was that shock to your nervous system?
Little bit I was shocked, but after seeing Krishna house, and especially American beauties, I think something special here. So we tried.
Well, it was a halwa of Krishna house.
Halwa and rice, 108 varieties of rice, definitely.
You didn't have to cook that much.
Yeah.
And Durangi is staying with.
Yeah, she was tired.
Yeah. Very good. So good to see you. Thank you for coming. They also inaugurate Summer B at University of Florida. So I want to ask anyone who'd like to share some highlights. What was your highlight? 3-4 people. What was the best part of Summer A? Anyone like to say? What's the highlight of Summer A? Which started around what? May 15th?
Nights on Fridays.
Uh-huh. They've been good. Yeah, really good. This is the quietest semester of the year, and they've been good. Anyone else? Any other highlights?
Being slow on campus, being so slow on campus, and having more time to spend with the students was very nice, actually, because usually fall or spring it's like quite a rush.
Yes. All right, that's wonderful. Anything else? Anyone else? I mean, how did Krishna Cares do this semester? How was Krishna Cares this semester?
Yeah, we still did about 80 between 80 and 150 servers every day.
Wow. Kitty, what was that like for you? Yeah. Okay. This last week was really sweet, huh? Nice programs. All right, well, time to get down to business. Summer B. All right, this is, we're going to finish chapter 17 today from the 11th canto, which is a description of the Varnashram system. Leela Kishore Prabhu, I believe you started this chapter last Friday, right? Friday week. And you talked about, the Grihastha life. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm focused more on the brahmacharya life.
On brahmacharya and grihastha life. Okay, so we're going to talk, this is more about the Varnas, this section. All right. So there's a lot of verses, about 21 verses. Let's just take turns going around the room, men's side, ladies' side. Because there's a lot more men than ladies. How are we going to do this? Let's just do it the men's side, come back up to the women's side. Okay. All right? One translation each, please.
My dear Uddhava, general cleanliness, washing the hands, bathing, performing religious services at sunrise, noon and sunset, worshipping me, visiting holy places, chanting japa, avoiding that which is untouchable, uneatable, or not to be discussed, and remembering my existence within all living entities as a supersoul. These principles should be followed by all members of society through regulation of the mind, words, and body.
So we're going to be discussing the duties of the various Varnas, but Krishna just starts this discussion by saying, these are the duties for everybody, and notice they're all on the spiritual side. Everybody's joined accordingly.
The Brahmana observing the great vow of celibacy becomes brilliant like fire, and by serious austerity burns to ashes the propensity to perform material activities. Free from the contamination of material desire, he becomes my devotee.
A brahmachari who has completed his Vedic education and desires to enter the household life should offer proper remuneration to the spiritual master, bathe, cut his hair, put on proper clothes, and so on. Then, taking permission from the guru, he should go back to his home.
A brahmachari desiring to fulfill his material desires should live at home with his family, and a householder who is eager to purify his consciousness should enter the forest, whereas a purified brahmana should accept the renounced order of life. One who is not surrendered to me should move progressively from one ashram to another, never acting otherwise.
So notice this, one who is not surrendered to me should go through this system.
One who desires to establish family life should marry a wife of his own caste, who is beyond reproach and younger in age. If one desires to accept many wives, they must marry them after the first marriage, and each wife should be of a successively lower caste. Next.
All twice-born men, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, must perform sacrifice, study the Vedic literature, and give charity. Only the Brahmanas, however, accept charity, teach the Vedic knowledge, and perform sacrifice on behalf of others.
The Brahmana, who considers that accepting charity from others will destroy his austerity, spiritual influence, and fame, should maintain himself by the other two Brahminical occupations, namely teaching Vedic knowledge and performing sacrifice. If the Brahmana considers that those two occupations also compromise his spiritual position, then he should collect the rejected grains in agricultural fields and live without any dependence on others.
The body of a Brahmana is not intended to enjoy insignificant material sense gratification. Rather, by accepting difficult austerities in life, a Brahmana will enjoy unlimited happiness after death.
A Brahmana householder should remain satisfied in mind by gleaning rejected grains from agricultural fields and marketplaces. Keeping himself free of personal desire, he should practice magnanimous religious principles with consciousness absorbed in me. In this way, a Brahmana may stay at home as a householder without very much attachment and thus achieve liberation.
Just as a ship rescues those who have fallen into the ocean, similarly I very quickly rescue from all the calamities those persons who uplift Brahmanas and devotees suffering in a poverty-stricken condition.
Just as the chief bull elephant protects all other elephants in his herd, and defends himself as well. Similarly, a fearless king, just like a father, must save all the citizens from difficulty and also protect himself.
So Krishna was describing the Brahmins, and now he's describing the Kshatriyas.
An earthly king who protects himself and all citizens by removing all sins from his kingdom will certainly enjoy with Lord Indra in airplanes as brilliant as the sun.
If a Brahmana cannot support himself through his regular duties and is thus suffering, he may adopt the occupation of a merchant and overcome his destitute condition by buying and selling material things. If he continues to suffer extreme poverty even as a merchant, then he may adopt the occupation of a Kshatriya, taking sword in hand. But he cannot in any circumstance become like a dog, accepting an ordinary master.
A king or other member of the royal order who cannot maintain himself by his normal occupation may act as a Vaishya, may live by hunting, or may act as a Brahmana by teaching others Vedic knowledge, but he may not under any circumstance adopt the profession of a Sudra.
If a Vaishya or mercantile man who cannot maintain himself may adopt the occupation of a Sudra, and a Sudra who cannot find a master can engage in simple activities like making baskets and mats of straw. However, all members of society who have adopted inferior occupations in emergency situations must give up those substitute occupations when the difficulties have passed.
One in the Grihastha order of life should daily worship the sages by Vedic study, the forefathers by offering the mantra Swadha, the demigod by chanting Swaha, all living entities by offering shares of one's meal, and human beings by offering grains and water. Thus, considering the demigods, sages, forefathers, living entities, and human beings to be manifestations of my potency, one should daily perform these 5 sacrifices.
A householder should comfortably maintain his dependence, either with money that comes of its own accord, or with that gathered by honest execution of one's duties. According to one's means, one should perform sacrifices and other religious ceremonies.
Me?
A householder taking care of many dependent family members should not become materially attached to them, nor should he become mentally unbalanced, considering himself to be the Lord. An intelligent householder should see that all possible future happiness, just like that which he has already experienced, is temporary.
The association of children, wife, relatives, and friends is just like the brief meeting of travelers. With each change of body, one is separate from all such associates. Just as one loses the objects one possesses in a dream when the dream is over.
Deeply considering the actual situation, a liberated soul should live at home just like a guest, without any sense of proprietorship or false ego. In this way, he will not be bound or entangled by domestic affairs.
A householder devotee who worships me by execution of his family duties may remain at home, go to a holy place, or if he has a responsible son, take sannyas.
There's 2 more now. It's quite this. But a householder whose mind is attached to his home and who is thus disturbed by ardent desires to enjoy his money and children, who is lusty after women, who is possessed of a miserly mentality, and who unintelligently thinks everything is mine and I am everything, is certainly bound by illusion. Oh, my poor elderly parents and my wife with a mere infant in her arms and my other young children, without me, they have absolutely no one to protect them and will suffer unbearably. How can my poor relatives possibly live without me? Thus, because of this foolish mentality, a householder whose heart is overwhelmed by family attachment is never satisfied. Constantly meditating on his relatives, he dies and enters into the darkness of ignorance. Giant uplifting ending to the chapter. So we'll do verse 55 in some more depth. Yes. Karma bhir griha medhi yair Ishtva mam eva bhaktiman Tishted vanam bhapo vishyet Prajavan va parivrajat Karma bhir griha medhi yair Ishtvamam eva bhaktiman Tishted vanam vapo vishyat Prajavan va parivrajat. Please chant. Karma Anyone else? Karma Synonyms together, please. Karma be by activities, Griha me suitable for family life. Ishva, worship. Mam me, eva indeed. Bhaktiman, being a devotee. Tishtet, one may remain at home. Vanam, the forest. Va, or. Upavshet, may enter. Ravan, having responsible children. Va, or. Parivrajat, may take sannyas. And together, please. A householder devotee who worships me by execution of his family duties may remain at home or go to a holy place, or he has a responsible son. Report. This verse describes the three alternatives for a householder. He may continue at home, or he may take vanaprastha, which involves going to a sacred place with one's wife, or if he has a responsible son to take over family duties, he may take sannyas, the renounced order, for a definitive solution to the problems of life. In all three ashrams, ultimate success depends on sincere surrender to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the most important qualification one can have is Krishna consciousness. Jaya Srimad Bhagavatam. And we live in Gainesville, not far from the police station. It's about 8 blocks or so, half a mile away. And that police station is there, and it looks different ways to different people, depending on which side of the law you are on. For the law-abiding citizen, it's there, but it's no threat. For the law-breaking citizen, one becomes cautious and avoids it, and in fact, may often end up entangled in it and put in some restricted condition. So similarly, this material world is a creation of the Supreme Lord. And for the law-abiding citizen, it is not a fearsome place. But for the criminal, it's a place of entanglement. So generally in the material world, we are here because we are materially inclined, and therefore we're entangled in its consequences. In the Gita, Krishna says, Karanam guna sangasya sadasat joni janmasu, that the living being becomes captivated by the modes of nature and then coerced into taking birth after birth in various species of life. So the creation of, is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Krishna creates the material nature, the material elements, but it is the propensity of the living entity to get entangled with the modes that is the criminal activity and causes the punishment. So Krishna consciousness means we deal with that proclivity to enjoy this material world, and therefore try to rectify our criminal mentality of enjoying. It's like our friend Alex is suffering in prison, a very vivid experience, yeah? Of how when one breaks the law, one gets restricted in one's activities. So what we don't see is that we are also imprisoned by the modes of nature. We are captured, we are forced to act. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. Krishna says that the modes are forcing us to behave in certain ways. And we think, though we think, I'm free. Maybe that's the difference between us and Alex. We're equally controlled, but we're thinking we're free. That is a masterful job of imprisoning, isn't it? When you're actually captured, but you think, I'm free. I mean, what could be a better prison, right? What could be a better way to control the activities of a wayward criminal? So the material world is like that. We're thinking ourselves free, but we are actually forced to carry out the direction of the modes of nature because we become entangled with them, because we have that propensity to try to criminally enjoy that which was not ours to enjoy. So in bhakti, we get right to the heart of this problem. And that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness, the essential desire to enjoy or lord it over the material nature. Now, in the prison, there are steps to reformation. They call it, in fact, the whole prison system is called what do they call it? The reformatory? Correctional. The correctional, yes. The Department of Corrections. So we could look at Varnashrama like the Department of Corrections. It is a path for the wayward living entity to begin to reconstruct their life in a correct way. So we all like to have guidance. I mean, I remember as a teenager just wanting some guidance in life that did not have to do with material enjoyment. And I thought certain rock and roll stars, they were like the more spiritual ones, like Jethro Tull or the Moody Blues. I thought they were spiritual. I thought this Krishnamurti was spiritual, Baba Ram Das was spiritual. All these were people who they knew what was going on. But they couldn't give any instruction or direction about how to live. It was all just sort of this mystic jello that wouldn't stick on the wall, nothing to grab onto. So the beauty of our parampara is that here are very specific ways by which one can be corrected. The Varnashram system is a tool, but it is not the goal. Once Lord Chaitanya was speaking with this great devotee named Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy was a highly placed executive in the government, very responsible man, like a governor practically of the province. And he came not from a Brahminical, but from not from a priestly family, but from a mercantile family, administrative family. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi, like on the top of the Varnashram system. But because he knew Ramananda Roy was such a great devotee, he came and inquired from him. So please tell me, what is the ultimate goal of life and the means to obtain it? So Ramananda Roy's first answer was, well, the Varnashram system. This is the way by which you can become corrected. This is the way that which the human being can be elevated. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected that answer. He said, that's material. So he went on to keep pressing and pressing until Ramananda Roy finally said it is Radha's causeless love for Krishna that is the highest perfection of life, to understand that love. So Ramananda Roy then said, of course, my Lord, you're telling me to give answers. You're making me talk like a puppet. But the point is that his initial offer of the Varnashram system was insufficient for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, Varnashram is great for the mass of people who are not Krishna conscious, by which they can gradually become Krishna conscious. However, the system has been perverted so much in Kali Yuga that people look down on it and consider it one of the most ignorant parts of Indian culture. Why? Because instead of evaluating a person based on their qualities and their inherent qualities, they're evaluated on what? On their birth. Right? So a person who's born in this caste is doomed to stay in this caste. See? And like the Brahminical families have this built-in heritage. Just like there's a whole controversy about getting into universities these days. There was some attempt to balance the racial structure of the student bodies, but now it's been overturned. That can no longer be a consideration in admissions. However, if an applicant had a parent who went to that university, well, they get to the head of the line. Right, so it's a sort of a caste system. The families, the Harvard families get to continue being Harvard families, and everyone else, you're out of luck. Maybe next birth. You go to UL. Or even UCF. So the idea of our position in life is determined by our abilities in a fair society, in a legitimate society that is balanced and honest. In the Gita, Krishna describes this system because it's a divine system. Varnashram is created by him. Chaturvarna maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasa. So guna means quality and karma means work. So according to one's inclinations and abilities, one belongs in one of these four orders of life. In a healthy Varnashram system, there is no competition. There's no sense of superiority and inferiority. Every part of the body is important. Just as if we have an ailment in our arm or our shoulder, it is equally disturbing to an ailment in our stomach, or an ailment in our leg, or an ailment in our head. You know, we might consider, I could have some quality of life without my leg or my arm. I can't do without the head. All right, well, maybe. But still, the point is that every part of the body is valuable. And in a healthy body, every part is working in a cooperative way. So similarly, in a healthy Varnashram society, everyone's engaged according to their inclination, and everybody is content, and everybody is respectful of one another and values their contribution. However, in a materially distorted society, then one position is given more prestige than another, and therefore people want to hang on to their prestigious position regardless of their qualifications. Or they are doomed to stay in their unprestigious condition regardless of their qualifications. So for these reasons, Varnashram has a limited application in society today. But all of the Varnashram considerations are transcended by Krishna consciousness. A devotee can act in any Varna or any ashram. The devotee can freely engage as a sannyasi, as a householder, as a vanaprastha, as a brahmachari, as a brahmin, as a vaishya, as a kshatriya, or as a shudra. No stigma, no attachment. And a devotee can go freely from one to the next. You can go wash the dishes, a shudra profession. You can go give a class, and then go give a class, a brahminical profession. You can load up the Krishna lunch cart, or a Shudra profession, or you can serve prasadam, a Brahminical profession. So you work that's a Vaishya profession, right? Yeah, so there's no restriction based on our birth. And the beautiful thing about Krishna consciousness also is that anybody can take to it. You don't have to be a Brahmin. You don't have to be inclined to study scriptures or teach. I always like to give the example of Jayananda Prabhu, who Prabhupada canonized. The only disciple that he certified was a saintly person going back to Godhead. He couldn't remember the Gayatri mantra. He was just a hard-working, very deeply sincere devotee, but he couldn't remember the Gayatri mantras. Finally, Prabhupada tried to coach him, and then he said, "It is hopeless." So, but because you are sincere, whatever you say, Krishna will accept it. So, what kind of Brahmin is this? Gayatri is the hallmark of the Brahmin, right? But the point is, the devotee is above the Varnashram system, above any of these designations. Lord Chaitanya himself said, "I'm not a sannyasi." He was born in a Brahmin family. He said, "I'm not a Brahmin." He was acting as a sannyasi. He said, "I'm not a sannyasi. Nor am I a Shudra, a Vaishya, or anything else. I am Gopi Bhartu Padakamayor Das Das Anudas. I'm the servant of the gopis 1,000 times removed." So the GPS for our lives that was missing in these quasi-spiritual sources is that pleasing Krishna is the goal. Pleasing Krishna is the goal. Without that element, there's no guidance in life. In the first canto, Sutta Goswami says, "Atad pumbir dvija shreshtas varnashramam vibhagasa. Swanustitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshino." Whatever position in life one may be in, if one is trying to please Krishna, that's the perfection. And we can do just about anything for Krishna. You can make music for Krishna, you can have a job for Krishna, you can fight a battle for Krishna, anything but pashugna, kill an animal for Krishna. You can't be a butcher for Krishna. I remember there was a devotee in London years ago, the temple commander, who had come from being a butcher. He had joined, he was a butcher, and then he joined. What's that? Best temple commander ever. Nobody questioned his instructions. Now, our lineage of teachers from whom we get this knowledge, how to please Krishna, how to serve Krishna, is also historically above these designations of Varna and Ashram. We have our most 5 recent acharyas here on the altar: Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Kishore Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Jagannath Das Babaji. So let's start with Srila Prabhupada. He was a householder in fact, he met his guru some years after he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta after being married. And therefore he always felt kind of left out, like he couldn't participate in the mission as much as his godbrothers because of his family responsibilities. But he very responsibly kept up his family duties, and he worshipped his deities, and he did everything he could to serve the mission of his spiritual master while keeping his family responsibilities. Now, why would Krishna arrange such a thing? Why couldn't Prabhupada have met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as a single man and then become a sannyasi like most of his senior godbrothers? You know, everyone's life has this trajectory that's created by Krishna for his own reasons. But as I reflect on Srila Prabhupada's life, if he had not had all these experiences, first of all, he would have been enmeshed in the Gaudiya Math and all of its difficulties after Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance. And as a householder, he raised children, and he had these very practical experiences that later served him very well when he was dealing with young men and women, and he was developing the institution of ISKCON. So he went through all these stages. And he was, you might remember from his biography, how reluctant he was to take sannyas. He had dreams that Bhaktisiddhanta was coming to him, saying, take sannyas, and he thought, oh, horrible, I don't want to do that. But he did it at the appropriate time because it was necessary for the service of his guru. So Prabhupada had all the ashrams, essentially. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, after he left his family, and sannyas. So he went through them all. But through them all, what was his purpose? He wanted to please Krishna and please his spiritual master. So he was not encumbered by any of them. He used them, but he was not ever really identified, you could say, with any of them. He was just, as he said of his guru, a Vaikuntha man. He just always wanted to please Krishna. And he was ready to break down any kind of Varnashram restrictions for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness. Right? Like a sannyasi, for example, is not supposed to leave India. Supposed to stay in the holy dham, but he crossed the ocean. You're not supposed to do that because you might die outside of the holy dham and you don't want to risk your trip back to Godhead. He risked it, no, immediately. Gladly, after years of trying. So then going back one generation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, an amazing personality. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a householder with, was it 13 children? 10? Anyway, in the double digits. At least. And he had come from a prosperous family who lost all its wealth, and then he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, you could say, through his hard work and diligence, and became a prominent member of the British government in India. And with this big family, with all this family responsibility. But some of his children were interested in his spiritual pursuits, others were not. So he spent a lot of time with these children who were keen on following in his footsteps as a devotee of Krishna, Bhaktisiddhanta being the foremost. So Bhaktisiddhanta, after he was ready to be initiated, asked his father, would you please initiate me? And he said, no, you go to Gorkishore Das Babaji. Now, at that time, there were no sannyasis in the Vaishnava community. They were all Babajis, the few that were there. And a Babaji is one who has renounced the Varnashram system. For the Babaji, okay, I'm not identifying with any of these Varnas, any of these ashrams. I'm just going to chant. I'm just going to serve Krishna, and I'm not going to observe any of these social restrictions. This is a person, you could say, who's out of the system of corrections. He has got parole. So the Babaji was considered the way to go if you want to be a devotee. So Bhaktivinoda being a householder, and it was a common thing that a father or grandfather could initiate their son or grandson. It was common thing, because that was just how it would work. If the elder and the member, elder family member was a Vaishnava, they would give their Vaishnava Diksha to their dependents, or the younger members of the family. Bhaktivinoda said, no, you go to Gorkishore Das Babaji, whom he regarded very highly. So this Gorkishore Das Babaji was definitely very detached personality. He had been a householder, a cloth merchant. His wife died, and he moved to Vrindavan and then to Navadvip to just live in the Dham and chant. And he just wanted people to basically leave him alone so he could chant. That was pretty much his message to the community. There's many stories. He would go and chant where people passed stool on the riverbank. The first time I was in Mayapur, I was taking a nice japa walk along the natural beauty of the riverbank, and all the local people were kind of laughing and pointing. And I didn't know why. And one of them kindly said, "This is where people evacuate." So I said, "Yeah, I'm just following in Gorkishore's footsteps." Not really. But he would go there, but still people would come to him because they considered him so wise and saintly. They would go for advice on their ordinary problems. So he finally he put on a fancy dhoti and started walking through the streets, chanting very loudly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then people thought, oh, this so-called renunciate, look at him, he's wearing expensive clothing, showing off his chanting. Then they left him alone. So he broke all the rules, didn't identify with any varna, any ashram. And then Bhaktisiddhanta went to him for initiation. He refused. He said, you're a scholar, I'm illiterate, how can I initiate you? But Bhaktivinoda insisted, so Bhaktisiddhanta said, according to one version at least, they were together in the river. He was following him. Gorkishore said, leave me alone. Bhaktisiddhanta followed him anyway. And he went into the river to bathe, and Bhaktisiddhanta went in standing next to him, and Gorkishore picked up some mud and threw it at him. Said, leave me alone. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, well, at least you've done that. At least I have this. And he told him, if you don't accept me as your disciple, you will leave this river and I will not. I'll just drown. I have no reason to live. So then Bhaktisiddhanta accepted him as his disciple. So Bhaktisiddhanta then lost his father, passed away. Then he lost his guru, passed away. So he was in this position. He wanted to be a Babaji himself, and he was. For 10 years, he sat under a thatched roof and chanted 192 rounds a day, something like that. 160 some, just chanted all day. That's what Babajis do. They just want to chant all day. So Bhaktisiddhanta did this for 10 years. He took a vow to chant 1 billion names of Krishna, which is roughly like 10 times the amount we chant or more every day. So, but after some time, he was called to become a preacher. So as an avadut himself, as one who was above the Varnashram, what did he do? He went and initiated himself as a sannyasi. Because sannyasi is necessary for preaching. So again, you see, even his accepting sannyas was without real regard to the system, because he was avadut. We're reading here in the 11th canto. What is like one of the last lessons Krishna gives to Uddhava here in the 11th canto? It's about the avadut Brahman, right? And then and of course, Lord Nityananda, who's the Adi Guru, the original Guru. What is his position in Varnashram? Nobody knows. Sometimes he's a sannyasi, sometimes he's a grihastha, sometimes avadut. So this is something in our lineage, this position of being transcendental to the Varnashram system. And yet, it can be very helpful for our own progressive development in life. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Grihe take vani take sada hari bolo dake. Doesn't matter your varna or your ashram, just chant the holy name. So whatever our situation in life, it makes no difference. If we want to please Krishna, that's the perfection. This description is there of the Varnashram system. It is of some relevance, but not the goal of our lives. Right? So when we read these various injunctions, we should be careful not to take them very literally. I have to do this in order to please Krishna. No. What we do to please Krishna is please our gurus in disciplic succession. And they showed us the example that the highest principle is pleasing Krishna. Some sit here, Hari Toshna. All right, any comments or questions? Rahel Prabhu.
If you could reiterate a bit more, I know you said Lord Chaitanya, he had many Brahminical qualities, but he never identified as a Brahmin.
He was born of a Brahminical family, Jagannath Mishra.
So I guess my question is, what's the importance of not identifying with the single Varna in today's time?
Because it's subordinate to the desire to please Krishna. If we were dependent on the Varnashram system, we would all be disqualified automatically from studying Srimad Bhagavatam, from living in the temple, from taking initiation, because we would be less than Shudra. That is our position. Kalo Sudra Sambhava, not only in the West, but everyone in Kali Yuga is born less than a Shudra. So all the distinctions that we might make, oh, I'm a Brahmin, I'm a man, I'm a this, I'm a that, these are ridiculous because everybody is a Kali Yuga Chela, right? What is that the word? The disciple of Kali?
Thinking there's an answer to her, so sometimes hear devotees, or like myself, oh, I'm Brahmanically inclined, I'm inclined in a different way. So for our own selves, how much effort should be put to see what Vala is asking, to identify with any particular Varna or not focus so much on that?
We should try out all of them in Krishna service. That's my advice. When we are young, that's a time to have a variety of experiences and see what it is that inspires us most deeply. And then, as far as possible, serve in that capacity. Always with the understanding that we may not get to immediately serve exactly the way we want to serve. Srila Prabhupada, again, is the example. He got this order from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to spread Krishna consciousness to the English-speaking world in 1922. And it wasn't until 44 years later that he was able to fully execute that order, although he tried all that time. So by Krishna's arrangement, it wasn't possible. We should also be prepared to accept. We may have a certain way we want to serve. It may take some time. Utsahan, Nishchayat, Dharya. Enthusiasm, but patience also. But yeah, youth is a time to try out everything. Try out everything before entering Grihastha life. Because Grihastha life is much more restricted. You have many more demands, many more responsibilities that make it more difficult to experiment and to have adventures and new experiences.
Thank you very much. There's something that came up in verse 41, and I'm just curious to know how should we see it, in what light should we seek the understanding of that. It's in regards to the Brahmana who considers other things like not the first class, but the alternative occupations like teaching and performing sacrifice. What is to determine that if those activities should compromise his spiritual position? What would that mean? What are the indications that as we are performing whatever A or B class or C class of activities according to our ashram, is that it's something that is compromising our spiritual position?
We can measure. We can measure that by our enthusiasm and by our taste for chanting. If our activities are compromising those things, then yeah, we are risking more than it's worth. So as long as we can get up in the morning, as long as we can go to bed early at night and get up early in the morning and chant Hare Krishna and read Srimad Bhagavatam before the day's activities, we can do that with some joy, then we're all right. It doesn't really then matter so much what our activity or our vocation might be during the day. But if we get to a point, like I'm thinking of poor Bhakta Nick, Bhakta Nick is going up to work for Royal Bank of Canada in Manhattan. And although they're nice Canadians, not as passionate as Americans perhaps, still he's got to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. 10 to 12-hour days, 6 days a week. That's the internship that he signed up for. It's pays well, 6 figures, but then it's a lot of work. And Nick, if you're listening out there, Haribol, we're still thinking of you. In his particular field, that's what is required. So he asked me a similar question. I was saying the same thing. If you can still maintain your sadhana, you'll be okay, even in this intense situation. Yes. And you can't, If people are saying, okay, I got to chant my rounds at 9 o'clock at night to finish, but I'm still chanting. Well, okay, yeah, that's good, but it won't be very hard to maintain. To maintain, it's got to be early in the morning. At least that's been my experience with you, personally and with others. Chanting our rounds late at night, then it's not long before this isn't working for me anymore. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Okay.
Just like on Friday or Saturday, we had a program with Radhanath Maharaj and Chandramauli Maharaj, and Radhanath Maharaj made one comment that chanting Hare Krishna is the foundational activity by which we're connected to all other services to Krishna. And then Chandramauli Maharaj was saying that the only way he has been able to stay in Krishna conscious for the last 50 years is that his only goal is to wake up and do his rounds by 7 a.m. in the morning. He was telling us, don't be a member of the late night Japa club, something like that. Cancel your membership and do it early in the morning, and that's what will bring strength to your spiritual life. It was iterating over and over again.
Very good. Very good. Yes. You stay up late, then you for Mangal Artik, you join the fan club. Right? Did I tell you that? And then if you really stay up late, you have to join the Lions Club, right? Yeah, that's a fun joke. Okay, so speaking of ashrams, one of our wonderful students here, Govinda Prabhu, is going to be transitioning from brahmachari to grihastha life after 4 years of Krishna conscious practice. So would you like to say a few words, guys? Stand up yeah, so we can see you. He's asking everyone's blessings.
Well, Hare Krishna. It's quite official. I felt very fortunate to kind of receive this verse. This whole Bhagavatam actually felt very auspicious. I didn't expect it, but it felt all in line. So I feel like Krishna is kind of blessing me in that sense. My 4 years at Krishna House have been very moving because my life before this was no Krishna and no Krishna conscious friends. And over the past 4 years, now I have Krishna. I have so many Krishna conscious friends, and I have a compass to go back to Godhead. And I was thinking how profound that is. As Prabhupada said, this life, just give this one lifetime to Krishna. And actually living in the ashram for the past 4 years and taking brahmachari vow for 2 years, it really solidifies your experience that this life is meant for Krishna. And that whatever you do after this, if you can have this foundation of living in the ashram for some time, it will keep you going. It will keep you going, and I feel that. I feel sheltered from everything I've done over the last 4 years. I feel Krishna has got my back, whatever I do, because I have this foundation of good sadhana, of remembering Krishna, of chanting, and good association, all the principles that we get from Bhagavatam and we study. So I ask everybody's blessings and all the Vaishnavas in this room on this next step. So, Hare Krishna.
Okay, auspicious. Thank you very much. Yeah. It is true that your ashram experience will help you endure the rigors of householder life and while keeping your sadhana intact. Just turn your house into an ashram. All right, that's the meaning of adhikari, means one who is competent to create an ashram. So may you be so blessed. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sade Govinda.